Hey Doc, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. What's up? How's life?
Uh, it's good. I just want to, am I on OBS? Like, you guys see my pretty face right now, or
Oh, we
are you
see it at a
s-
massive level.
seeing a C tier version of Duck?
Yeah, when are you gonna trim that? I mean, get yourself in order.
Do you guys want to find if you guys want to see how nasty this is,
We see how
the
nasty
longest
it.
one, the
Oh,
longest one goes down below my chest, below my diaphragm.
oh, we see it.
Pretty funny.
We see it. So, what's your problem, dude?
Um, I don't know. As an atheist, I tend to think moral murder is unethical. And I don't know. I'm all jacked up. I'm seeing people in LA. I wanna I wanna go get a taco next to a burning car. Um, and that stuff is really important to me.
Well, it doesn't look like the taco stands are getting burned. So,
That's called wisdom,
yeah,
I believe.
I agree with that. Um, I'm fine with your food. I just don't want you here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some people have said that over the last, 100 years. Nationalism, that type of nationalism's always been a thing. But at the end of the day, we've always wanted migrant farm workers. We've always wanted the smartest people on earth to work at companies like Google. Um,
Did we always
so
want Google though? Is there a nationalism
yeah,
that you're okay with?
um, yeah, I support most forms of nationalism. I just think while we're being patriotic and nationalistic, we need to appreciate sort of the stories and the actual mechanisms in society. Like, there's a lot of important stuff you can glean from believing in God and country. So I'm not uniformly against nationalism. But like if I'm a professor or something, I take out my red pen. And it's like, yeah, merging into bigotry and hatred, that's not good. If you go too communists, that's
Wait a
probably
second.
not really
Hold on a second.
nationalistic. Okay.
Hatred, would you say hatred is like the privation of love?
I think privation of love, we're close. I'd say it's the lack of understanding.
Wait a second. If I don't understand math, it's not hatred.
Yeah, but if you're relating to math, like if you're going around saying 2 + 2 = 5, I would say that that means you hate
Oh,
math.
really?
How else should I see it?
Can men be women?
Um,
Can a man have a
uh,
baby duck?
yeah, you can be you can sexually be a man, and your gender can be a
No,
female.
no. Can a
Sure,
no? Can a
a woman.
so a man could have a baby?
Um, a sexual man could
A sexual
adopt a
man?
baby.
I mean, what's a
Yeah.
man if it's not sexual? What is this thing you're talking about?
Um, I
So
yeah,
so
I,
so
I
look
think
look
it's
look. If
genetic
math,
codes.
if I say 2 + 2 = 5, and in the act of defying reality, that's hatred. But you can say a man could have a baby.
Yeah, because their gender isn't like if you understand gender in society, I think is what I'm supposed to say. If you understand gender in society, you understand that part of it is a choice, right? It's not determined by just what our psychology and our genes determine us to be based on where we're
So what are
born.
we referring to then? Because if there is a man who looks like you, and he's in a suit, and that's a men's suit, and he's out on the street, and someone goes up to him and says, "Look at that man," and he turns around and says, "I'm a woman." He doesn't have to change anything about his appearance or sexuality under this gender ideology to say he's a woman, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he honestly feels that way, right? If you're trolling and that's based on hatred, then
Wait.
you're a liar, right? I don't like people who
No, no,
I
no,
don't want
no. I'm
someone
not saying he's
telling lies to
trolling.
me about that stuff.
I'm
But
saying that if he is dressed like in a men's suit, right? And he has a beard like yours or mine, and he's on the street, right? And he's presenting as what our culture looks at as masculine or man, but he says, no,
Yeah.
I'm a woman. You're saying it's hatred to be like, what, to question what the hell is he talking about? Like, what are you referring to, bro?
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of like a really tough one for me because I mean, it's a good question, right? Because I don't think we should be, obviously I'm on the left. I don't want to be launching inquisitions about what people tell us and how they report their experience into sort of understanding or contextualizing how we might like start a conversation with someone. But I also do think like, yeah, that would be problematic if any individual is going around and saying they're man when in fact they don't actually, or saying they're female when they don't identify that way. I could understand how that would be problematic, or it's also that emerges because that person is unethical. I think that's different than saying that like, well, I reject trans identity. To me, I can't do that. There's nothing in there for me.
You can't reject something that's incoherent?
Yeah, if it was incoherent, right? If someone was going around saying I'm a female and I have an XY chromosome, and this also means now I have fallopian tubes or something, like in that case, like I would.
Well, that's not. Well, yeah, that's
that
one example, but that's reducing it to sex. If the argument is, Duck, let me see if you agree with this statement. Sex and gender are not the same.
I do agree with that statement.
Okay, and female is not the same as woman.
Yeah. So I mean that's linguistic, so I'm not too hung up on it. But yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Can a female be a trans woman?
Can you be like a double female, like yes or no, or?
Well, no,
deception?
no, it's not a double female because you just said female and gender are not the same. That means female and woman are not the same. So it's not a double. The question is, if female is not the same as woman, can a female be a trans woman?
I mean, I don't understand how that would occur. If you have two XX chromosomes, I don't understand why you have to.
No, that's sex.
You keep
going. No, dude, you're in a contradiction.
And then trans.
You keep contradicting yourself, Duck. If it's premise one is woman and female are not the same thing, and female is the XY, chromosome distinction, or let's say developmental pathway sexually, that's not identical to woman. So I said, can a female be a trans woman?
So I wouldn't, in this case, the part that's a little problematic for me is that like it totally makes sense from my perspective, JB, that a woman also at some point would say, yeah, I'm XX and I'm also a woman. I don't understand how they would then add that they're a trans woman. Like I didn't. Like I would have to understand.
The question isn't whether or not you understand why they would. The question is a logical inquiry, because if it's the case that female and woman are not the same thing, that means you should be able to be a female and identify as a trans woman, being that woman itself is not identical to female.
Yeah, I mean, if I can explain, like, let's say me, Duck, I'm the example, Duck, and I say, yeah, I'm a male, but I'm a trans man. What I would mean by that is like, well, I don't think men in the past have taken care of the planet, or they haven't really been nice to each other. And to your buddy Duck, that's something so important. And so, to me, I'm always trying to, I say, look, Jimbob, I say, look out for your buddy Duck, wouldn't you give me a break? And so I apply that same spirit toward, the planet, toward sort of the social systems we have. And so I'm a trans man. Like, I understand that. I don't understand.
What the fuck are you talking about?
I don't understand how we're having this very weird family of subjects. This weird family of subjects where we have.
Yeah, the weird subject XX family is someone invented the term gender and tried to argue that woman is not identical to female. And then when I come in and say, well, if it's not female, what are you referring to? And they say, we don't actually know. And then if it's the case that someone held the view that a female is not the same as a woman, then it should follow that a female could actually be a trans woman, being that woman isn't identical to female. Why can't they could be a trans woman? But how would you know they're a trans? The correct answer from the Troon's ideology you're trying to defend is, oh shit, if female isn't identical to woman, then it's possibly logically for a female to be a trans woman. But this is where you guys all fall apart, is because actually there's a cognitive dissonance that triggers at this point, where the term trans means a transition from one thing to another. And the thing you're actually referring to as a transition is this assumed presentation of sex or category of sex, that otherwise if you were a female, let's say you were a male and you thought you were a woman, if you really believed being a male wasn't the same as being a woman, you wouldn't need to chop your dick off to be a woman, because that would mean sex is what determines whether you're a man or a woman. But you're denying that while appealing to the sexual category, like someone moving presentation-wise from one sex to the other. If the gender is not identical to the sex, why would you need to do any surgery? For instance, if someone goes to a surgeon and goes, gender is not biological. Gender is not biological. And then the surgeon's holding a knife and he goes, then what am I operating on?
Yeah, so, I think, what's her name? That lady, Rhonda Patrick. Sorry, I just had to Google it, but Rhonda Patrick's one of these big people who does a lot on nutrition. I think she said that, your chromosomes determine gender and stuff as well. I reject that. Maybe I'm not scientific enough, but the reason I reject that is I can say trans woman, or I can say, biological female, or I can say a woman, and it's at least on the surface, it's conceivable all three of those names or labels are referring to the same person. So if I say JB is a man, if I say Jimbob is a trans man, if I say Jimbob is a host of a show,
well, no, a trans man would assume that there was a change from one thing to another, a transition, so to speak. So the problem with the entire philosophy, and now I'm glad, culturally it's pretty much done and cooked, because it's philosophically incoherent. Why? Because my first premise still stands and you haven't engaged with it. If you agree with the first premise, female is not identical to woman, then a female could be a trans woman. Now, if it's logically the case that a female could in fact be a trans woman, you'd have to be able to tell me what is it she is becoming or identifying with if it's not female. But none of you guys, because you're all delusional, honestly. You're spiritually unwell, so you don't see reality properly.
Yeah, so I just don't understand the logical link. If I'm thinking axiomatically, there's nothing in saying a trans woman that necessarily isn't XX or necessarily isn't XY. And so
you keep using the gender and then referring to the referent as sex, but you just said sex and gender are not the same. So you keep running from this, Duck. I don't agree at all. I don't agree even a little bit. Let's listen and see if you agree with the premise. Female is not identical to woman, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if female is not identical to woman, can a female be a trans woman?
Yes, they can still refer to the same thing. You don't need to.
Hold on a second. What is the female referring to when they say they're a trans woman?
If you're talking about a woman being a female, you're describing, you can say a female or a female person, right? So a female person is like painting a house. It's well, this person is a person or a human first. I don't know if that makes sense or you understand that. And so if you're painting a house and saying this is a female, you're not saying that having a set of XX or XY chromosomes is something a person necessarily does. You're saying I have to tell you about this.
Look,
I can humanize someone who is different.
What was my question?
I honestly don't even know.
I know you don't know
To be
because you don't
completely
listen. None of you
honest.
guys listen. We have to talk
Right.
in like crayon language. It's like talking to my 6-year-old. Like I have to slow things down and use, is I could run this by my own 6-year-old and they would answer it better than you. If you agreed that female is not identical to woman, and you agreed that a female can be a trans woman, what
Yes.
are they referring to when they say trans woman is the question.
So they're what they're saying is they're saying a subjective or constructed social definition is a trans woman.
That
They're
doesn't
not
tell me
saying that a
what they're
female.
referring to.
I'm not trying to overcomplicate this right here.
No, simplify it. What are they referring to? You know what you answered? They're referring to the thing that's not this other thing. I'm asking for the referent. If a female can be a trans woman and they say I'm a trans woman, what are they referring to?
If a woman is saying they're a trans woman, they're referring to their choice about gender.
That
their decision.
is nebulous. Doesn't tell me what they're referring to. Their choice to be a trans woman, right? What is the trans woman?
Yes.
What's the referent? What are they referring to?
So trans women and women in general have been constructed throughout history. If I think Melt has talked about natalism and antinatalism.
Dude. Holy shit, dude. Okay, let me ask it a different way. If a female identifies as a trans woman, what's different between the female and the trans woman?
A female and a trans woman, well, the female would necessarily have XX chromosomes.
What's different?
They're essentially
look.
XX chromosomes.
That's not different. Look, if I'm a female and I identify as a trans woman, I still have XX chromosomes, and I'm a trans woman. What's different? Not the same. You're saying what's the same? If a female can be a trans woman, Duck, what's different between the female and the trans woman?
The trans woman might have a slightly more queer sense of heels, as well as blouses.
But they're still a female.
I couldn't. I don't know.
Are they different people?
Are they different people?
Yeah, you're basically saying they're different people. If there's a female and suddenly they wake up and they say, you know what, I'm a trans woman, and Duck's all, well, those are different things, so you can be. And then Duck asks the female, well, what's different about being a female and a trans woman? And you're like, there's no difference. It's literally he's just like she's just wearing different things. Like that doesn't change the universality of what they are at all.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to start there, in my opinion, it's like, well, do I have a cohesive sense of identity? What is it to have a sense of identity in the first place? I can say, like, just imagining a universe where I'm a Buddhist, right? And this is philosophically relevant, because as we actually unpack what it means to have an identity, I can say, well, Duck doesn't really have an identity. There's nothing I'm identical to.
No, that's disanalogous, because I can ask if someone's a Buddhist and they go, yes. And I go, what makes you a Buddhist? And they say, I believe in Jesus Christ is the second person of the Godhead, Logos incarnate. And I go, that's not Buddhism. I could actually distinguish a referent. Now, what I'm demonstrating in this conversation, Duck, and you know it, is that if it's the case that a female is not the same as a woman, then a female could be a trans woman. And if a female could be a trans woman, there has to be something you can point to that distinguishes between the female and the trans woman, and you said a blouse.
Yeah, but the reason a blouse makes more sense to me is that, it sounds very silly. It sounds a little bit absurd to say something like, like two random statements. So the first is that, the wind was blowing, 3 degrees northwest, and I got the scent of Hot Pockets, and so now I'm Hot Pocket Duck. The other thing I could say, is that, like, well, there's no possible world where Duck doesn't have an XY chromosome. So it's impossible to identify me without an XY chromosome, or if you identify me, this digital gnosis, he talks about this crap all the time, and it's like, well, then sure, have a word for biological male. But if it's not possible to, like, without my hot pocket world, without my blouses, without my heels, without my costume glasses I wear when I want to be all fancy, without my lip gloss when I want to look all pretty, without any of this stuff, if I don't have a male or a female, and it's just subjective, you add a color, you add a rouge, it changes. To me, that's that latter category. Everything there doesn't really matter anymore. It's the sniff test.
You don't actually believe that, do you?
Frequently I do believe that. Like, if I'm not saying like all trans people like fashion or all gay people like fashion, but if normally I don't talk to my guy friends about like fashion or aesthetics or something, and if you like that, that's cool. But I've also had gay friends who served in the military. What did we do? We fought, right? Like, we wrestled each other.
You did wrestle gay people in the military?
I wasn't in the military, but my friends that were in the military, yeah, because I wrestled. I did MMA. Yeah, I fought.
You wrestled the gay guys?
Yeah, my nickname at work was the specimen, because
I bet you were.
You could see I had a thick black turtleneck, and you could see my six pack through it. That's where I'm coming from.
What happened?
You
look like a starving Indian who painted his face white.
Yeah. It just so happens sometimes, in the United States, people get insanely lucky, get six-figure tech jobs. You listen to all the big influencers. Duck was going, oh, Duck's winning. And yeah, you either, to me, I got obese. Now I'm actually pretty nasty with it, but again.
Duck, just to bring it back to the conversation, if I'm walking down the street with my daughter and there's a man who looks like a man in a suit with a beard and a cigar, and he's very manly, to what we teach our kids and everyone else, what we come to know as masculine, and my daughter goes, Daddy, look at that man, and he overhears and turns around and says, listen, little missy, I'm a woman. He's the guy who seems to be a man says this to me and my kid, right?
He's correcting your child.
He's correcting my child, right? So now my child has to walk around, right? Because if my child says, no, you're not, it's hateful, right? Then I have to teach my child they're being hateful, right?
Well, if your child already had a preconceived notion of like rigid gender and
hold on a second.
I don't know
Duck,
how much.
Hold on a second. What I'm getting to is that you're teaching children a category and how to distinguish a category as a particular out in the world. There's a man in a suit who looks like a man who has a beard who turns around and says, I'm a woman, kid. Now, it turns out that this person who turned around and corrected my daughter has a twin. And the twin happens to dress just like this person, and they are the same sex. Now my daughter sees someone who's identical to that person and says, look at that woman. And he turns around and goes, listen, kid, I'm a man. Don't you think that would be a little confusing for kids, Duck?
I think that would be queer. That would be a very queer, weird scenario that only in 2025, only when you've had rigid designators, only when you've had prior knowledge that you have to accept about things that make no sense at all, dude. Like,
no, listen, dude.
Wait,
dude, no, this is nominalism unhinged. So this is the thing. When you even said you had kids, I don't understand how you don't see the problem is this. When you teach your kids categories, when they notice a particular of the category, they put it in the that's how they make sense and navigate the world. Our job as parents is to help kids navigate the world with proper categorization of particulars and universals. Gender itself, postmodernism, the shit that you're into, which is horrific, by the way, just look at what it's producing here on the screen, is that you teach kids that there's no such thing as universals, and that when they navigate the world, to call something a thing and put it in its category is actually some sort of ignorant notion, right? And so they're confused now because they're like, wait, is it a man or a woman? And Duck has to say, as Daddy Duck says, oh, sweetie, I know that's a good question. There's no such thing as the two. There's no such thing.
Okay, so
right?
Yeah, but if you're going to let me correct you on this, right? And if anyone in chat right now, your brain's not working, my favorite saying is you take it out, you put it back in, twist it to the left, tap the top 3 times. JB, if you're gonna take care of a definition of gender and it's gonna be inclusive, it works for what it needs to work for.
It doesn't
that's
work.
Fine.
It doesn't
work. No one
work.
needs to take care of a definite. I can say you don't have to take care of a definition of biological sex.
You can't tell me or my daughter, who's now confused by this example, you can't tell me what is the referent that they're referring to, because there's 2 things that look identical that have competing reference. One is a woman and one is a man, but they look exactly the same presented to the child. That's called confusing. That's demonic. That's upside down. You're deliberately confusing children because they're learning that the violation of the law identity is totally fine, right? So they don't actually learn what the world is because you're making it ambiguous and you're saying there's no such thing as the world. We can just declare palm trees to be rocks and refrigerators to be guitars, and it's all made up, and you don't even have to appeal to any of it or accept any of it. Like, it's all just gibberish and made up. And it's like, dude, what kind of view is this?
Let me ask you a question. Would I be wrong if if I'm a father or I have that type of relationship with someone? Would I be wrong to ask them to consider what the law of identity actually applies to? That would be like my first question.
Would it be wrong to ask what the law of identity applies to?
Yes, that's what I'm not getting here. That's what I don't understand.
You don't know what the law of identity applies to? Asking it is a demonstration of what it applies to. You're already assuming knowledge of what it applies to by asking.
Yeah, but if I say Kanye West made the most recent.
You mean Homer Simpson?
Homer Simpson.
Oh, you mean Michael Jackson, right?
Yeah.
They're all the same.
He made a fusion jazz song or something, dude.
Right.
Like, if I say Kanye West fusion jazz song.
No. Sorry. No, dude. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. By Kanye West, you mean Oprah Winfrey, right?
I thought you understood. I said something like moderately intelligent, and I thought you followed it.
Wait, no. I just want a clarification of who we're talking about. When you say Kanye West, you're actually referring to Oprah, right?
So yes, to clarify the hypothetical example. In this case, what I'm actually doing, and I'm actually referring to Kanye West, the person who has a Yeezy sneaker brand, the person who released College Dropout, and
so not Oprah Winfrey.
Fantasy.
So not
not Oprah Winfrey, but I'm saying that
could he be
has
Oprah
a fusion
Winfrey?
Jazz song.
I'm
not talking about a person right now. I'm talking about something.
Jazz.
We can talk
and
about
by jazz,
without all the bigotry and all the insanity.
And by jazz, you mean chess.
No, I don't mean.
Jazz. You mean something by jazz?
I mean fusion jazz.
Oh,
yeah. In my head, I'm talking about a song that I think is fusion jazz.
Okay, gotcha. So is fusion jazz a category that abides by the law of identity as a category?
I'm asking about the song again. Fusion jazz.
And by song, you mean circus ride, right? Because are we talking about a song? Does that have a meaning when you refer to song? That doesn't mean stapler, right?
Does it always? That's exactly what I'm asking though.
Do you mean stapler?
Always?
I'm confused.
No. I wanted to.
Because you say song, and I'm like, I think you mean stapler. I don't know why.
No, dude. Okay, so every Kanye West song isn't the same. Like, can we talk about that? Every Kanye West song isn't the same, and if that's true, then necessarily you have to also accept that it's at least weird that I can call a Kanye West song fusion jazz. And it's like as if by magic, your buddy Duck, the fixer Duck, the Duck who just knows everything. You already know which song I'm talking about there. You already know which song it is, buddy. So
you're proving the law of identity when your original question is why is it that we assume where the law of identity must necessarily apply? Are you purposely demonstrating your own answer, or are you just trolling?
No, what I'm saying is that it's, if the law of identity is true, it's not even clear how, like, the referent, or like if if I refer to something and I'm actually, I'm talking about, this is my Che Guevara.
Whoa. Oh, whereby has a time limit, unfortunately. Anyway, this is where nominalism gets you. It gets you insane. It's like insane levels. Nominalism makes your brain broken.